Good evening and welcome to the Psychic Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight, and I'm sitting down with Anodea Judith with her new book, The Goddess, from the Common Sense segment. Hi, darling. How are you?
I'm just great. Nice to be on here, Aeson.
Nice to be on you. Hello, Miss Brenda. Coffee's on the left, tea's on the right. Have a seat. Hello from Portugal. How are you? So, tell us about your new book that's launching tomorrow, guys.
Well, it is spring equinox, and it is the time when the goddess is being reborn in the flowers and the leaves, and it's a perfect time to bring out a book on the goddess, Blessed Reunions with the Feminine Face of the Divine. This is the 14th in the Common Sentience series by the publisher Sacred Stories Publishing. And it talks about the goddess in history and theory and mythology. It contains stories of real life encounters with the goddess by many different people and practices to bring the goddess into your life and back into our world.
Which is interesting. Now, which goddesses did you look at?
Oh, I've served the goddess for my whole life. I was ordained as a priestess in 1985, so that was quite a long time ago. And there's many, many goddesses from cultures all over the world that I've studied. But I told the stories of 16 different goddesses in the book, 4 for the maiden, 4 for the mother, 4 for the wise woman or crone, and 4 for the queen. So those are mythologies from different cultures that I told. And I look at the mother is what we always had. I go back into ancient prehistory to see how we worshipped a mother at one time. Then in the crone period, I look at the demise of the goddess and how the patriarchal forces basically plowed her underground brutally. And then the feminine coming back, the resurgence, that's the maiden. And finally, as women are stepping out into the world and serving and careers and whatnot, is the queen.
Right.
So,
which I enjoy that you have remembered the queen, because a lot of people, especially modern Wicca, forget that stage of the progression. They go mother, maiden, crone. It's like, no, there's a stage in between there.
There is now, and long ago, women's life, most women had, 8 children, and that spanned maybe 20 years of child rearing. And by the time they were 60, 65, they were pretty washed up and they didn't go out and have a career. But it's very different today. Women complete their child raising, or they don't have children at all, and they go out into the world and they serve humanity in one way or another as the queen.
Right. And that is, a different viewing that we've gone through, a different staging of it. Where did the erasing begin?
Where does the erasing of the goddess?
Yeah.
Well, really, we had the goddesses back in the classical period of ancient Greece, up to about 500 BC. But already at that time, you can see in the stories that patriarchal forces were starting to take over. But we did have a polytheistic culture of gods and goddesses who worked in partnership. And then, as Christianity came and instituted monotheism, it became the religion of the state in the Roman Empire. And by 325 AD, in the Council of Nicaea, it was established as the official religion of Rome, which was uniting the people under one God. And if you didn't believe that, then you were, put to death or ostracized. And shortly thereafter, Emperor Theodosius ordered the old temples destroyed. They ordered the statues beheaded. The priestesses were killed. And then it even got worse. It went on to the Inquisition in the Middle Ages. And by the time we got to the modern era, no one knew about the goddess anymore. No one even knew there ever was one. God was a he, and we just accepted that. And
Right.
I didn't question it when I was a child. God was a he, that was that. I didn't know there had ever been goddesses until I read Edith Hamilton's mythology in a 9th grade history class.
Really?
Uh,
Oh, goodness. You were, influenced by a history class that actually taught some real history. Um, do you find that the Judea religion originally was both polycentric, and then as first century into like third century Christianity began gaining popularity, they started pulling back on that, or had that already occurred?
No, the first Christian and Jewish religions were not not polytheistic, really, unless you consider the saints. And
Right.
a lot of the goddesses, like Bridget, that they couldn't get rid of because they were so popular with the people, they made them saints. So
Right.
Christianity has a Saint Bridget. So if you consider that, then there is a kind of polytheism. But no, they were more monotheistic and masculine, and
Hmm.
and there was, there wasn't much choice in the matter. You believe, in
Right.
fact, I say a religion without a goddess is halfway to atheism. But it's interesting that the term atheist was first used in the Roman Empire for the early Christians who didn't believe in the old gods. And
Hmm.
so theism is the idea that the divine resides within everything. It's in the trees,
Right.
it's in the animals, it's in you, it's in me, it's in everything. It's not some transcendent piece out there. And so theism is that the divine is in everything, but they didn't believe that. So they were atheists, meaning they were against that. And that was where the word was first coined.
I find it interesting that it's also where it's really was just like a footnote. Like it wasn't really, commonly used. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's brought back into view when about what, 1960 or so, when it became more common use.
You mean to use the word atheist?
Uh-huh.
I don't know when it actually came back into use. I just know when it first came into use. Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. It's weird how those just kind of like go back and forth. In your book, you say the goddess is not God in drag or Jehovah in a skirt. Now we know that Zeus and Loki was a little busy in the wardrobe department. What did you mean by that?
Well, we can't just say the God that we know from Christian or the Abrahamic religions, really.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, we can't just put lipstick on him and say,
Right.
this is the goddess. The goddess represents something wholly different, where the God was transcendent and it was about heaven and going up into the sky and going into the afterlife. The goddess is about what's right here, down on earth. She's about the cycle of the seasons. She's about the body. She's about pleasure and celebration and joy. She's not
Right.
about, asceticism and denying yourself in order to reach some spiritual state. That's a patriarchal
Right.
layover. And it has its place at certain times. There is
Right.
something to be gained by sitting still in meditation. It's a practice I do myself. But there is a certain denial of half of creation in that. And
Mm-hmm.
so we really need a feminine force in conjunction with the masculine. This is not an either or phenomenon. This is not
Right.
about the goddess taking over. It is about what's missing in our world that was denigrated when the goddess religions were plowed under. Everything that went with them, celebration,
Mm-hmm.
color, beauty, joy, dancing, things that were ritual, that were celebrated, beautiful art, the worship of the earth and nature, the worship of the
Right.
body. These things were all denigrated. And now today we have an environmental crisis, we have health crises, we've denigrated it so much. These values are missing in our world.
Mm-hmm. And they are very much so. Now, granted, they kind of, when the Abrahamic religions, I'm going to refer specifically to King James, who had a major problem with women. Like,
Mhm.
he was the leader of, removing any female leadership. They made some mistakes. They left some clues there, like in Genesis, when we make man in our image.
Exactly.
like there's little pieces there. And, you can look at like some of the Catholic behaviors having what I call the shadow effect with Mary, which is, you keeping some traditions alive. You spoke of the goddess Bridget and the priestesses that kept the fire and the nuns that kept the fire, then kept the candle. But that was a real war, that whole over the centuries. I mean, it was like chipping away at a statue.
Yeah, you have to consider that the worship of the Great Mother, which goes back
Mm-hmm.
as far as we can tell. I mean, they've found statues, some that they date to 200,000 BC, but we can safely say 30,000
Mm-hmm.
BC. Statues were found all over Europe and Asia that depicted a
Mm-hmm.
pregnant woman with pendulous breasts, that they worshiped the Great Mother. And so that, even if we are conservative,
Mm-hmm.
say 30,000 years, that's a lot of time for a culture to have in their collective
Right.
consciousness as a worship. So it took a lot to overthrow the goddess.
Right.
Think of how strong Christianity is in our world today with only 2,000
Right.
years. So it takes a lot to supplant these beliefs. So there was really, a very ruthless and methodical suppression
Right.
of the goddess religion to get rid of it, including demoting the status of women.
And do you feel, now this is kind of controversial, and if you don't want to comment, feel, do you feel like as the goddess energy is re-entering, because we listen to some mystics, their viewpoint is that we crossed a certain point in the galaxy and we're now in the time of the goddess, and things will be more harmonious. But we've also seen a lot of rampage on women's rights,
Oh,
not only
absolutely.
in the US, but across the planet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just heard today reading an article about Nigeria trying to reintroduce feminine circumcision, which is demonstrative
Mm-hmm.
and barbaric, trying to claim it as a religious practice.
Yeah,
Do you think these are the last throes of the patriarchy?
I do actually. I mean, that's the only way I can see it. When the U.S. overthrew Roe v. Wade, or the Supreme
Mm-hmm.
Court overthrew Roe v. Wade and left it up to the states, my first thought is this is going to be temporary. I
Right.
don't know how long it's going to take, but this is not going to be a permanent ban on
Mm-hmm.
abortion for women, and abortion and a ban and a control of
Right.
reproductive rights, much as certain factions may want it to be. Um,
Right.
and it's just, the wave of the future. We don't need, to increase population at a time when we're using up the resources of the planet. We don't need to bring in unwanted babies, and women are having more power. So, even Mexico, a Catholic country, passed abortion nationwide, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's really not in keeping with the times. So I think that this is a last final backlash, and actually a sign that, the patriarchy as we know it is teetering. And the way
Mm-hmm.
I think of it is the masculine is one leg and the feminine is the other leg. Let's
Right.
say the masculine is the right leg and the feminine is the left. Well, we took a giant step forward with science and into
Mm-hmm.
the masculine and the rational, and that
Right.
was great. But we can't take the next step without a feminine leg.
Right.
Like we walk on two legs, the butterfly flies on two wings. We need a
Right.
left wing and a right wing. We need a masculine and a feminine,
Mm-hmm.
and we need it integrated. So I think what we're moving to answer your question, is a partnership society, but that can
Mm-hmm.
only be founded on a partnership of equality.
Right. And I think it has to be universal equality, which
Yes.
is something, and I kind of alluded to, but did you run into any research on this? With like, there is mythology of Zeus to learn the arts of women. He went into full drag. Loki went into full drag for a number of his battles in mythology. Did you run into any of that when studying?
Well, there were servants of the goddess in ancient Greece who
Mm-hmm.
were eunuchs, actually,
Right.
and they were cross gender. And I don't think in the old school that the gender definitions were as polarized as they are today.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, what we're seeing more recently today is that polarization is starting to change. People are, playing with gender. They're gender fluid.
Mm-hmm.
They're trans, and they choose to change their gender. But I mean, I think this is something that was always the case, and it got suppressed and wiped out for a while, and now it is coming back into the culture.
Very much so. And in my viewpoint, I don't think it was that notable either.
Right. It wasn't a big thing, and it wasn't an ostracized, or it wasn't a thing of shame. It was quite accepted. In fact, I'm just looking for one of my cards here where I talk about some of the history of that. Give me a moment to find it. Because
not a problem. Show them off too, honey, because those are gorgeous.
Yeah. So the card I was looking for is the androgyne, which is the gender fluid. And in my card deck called She Rises, which I'll show you here,
right,
the poster behind me, it's Awakening Our Female Archetypes of Leadership. And I created this set of cards because I realized that women lead differently than men. And when we think of leadership, we think of it only in the masculine terms. The CEO who's on the top, the commander in chief who is masculine and barks the orders. But women have ways of leadership that were once revered and are wholly different. And even some of those are new forms of leadership that are just emerging. So I decided to make cards out of 38 of these archetypes, and the androgyne is one of them. But when we talk about people who are perhaps non-binary or, gender fluid, Plato describes a time when people were once spherical and contained both masculine and feminine until Zeus cut them apart, leaving them longing for each other, suggesting an original unity. Hermes was Hermes was Aphrodite, and Hermes was the hermaphrodite, which is both genders. So we have it all through history.
We do. And then, what I find interesting is like Irish mythology, which your book has a lot of different mythology stories. We look at the goddess Morgan. I mean, she goes against every feminine grain that the Victorians tried to input on top of her. It's like you can't make the Morgan feminine. She chooses the leader. She has sovereignty over Ireland, over your body, over your life. I like it that your book included mythology. And guys, this book is a weekend read. I promise you, if you cozy up with a notepad and some index cards, you can get through this weekend. You can get through this book in a weekend. But, and here's the but on this, you're going to go back through it again. How did you choose the mythology? Like, which ones did you, like, because there's so much mythology.
Well,
what was your process?
And having studied the goddess in mythology all my life, I certainly have my favorites, And so, for instance, the myth of Demeter, who is the agricultural goddess of ancient Greece. She's the corn maiden, or the goddess of wheat, and her daughter Persephone, or Kore, who was abducted into the underworld. That's a really extensive myth that says so much. And, that's been one of my favorites. And an organization I was part of called the Church of All Worlds, we actually recreated the Eleusinian mysteries in a cave. We did it for about 10 years, and I played the part of Demeter many times. And so I knew it well. And so certainly one of the mother stories I was going to tell, because the mother who has lost her child is a universal story. All mothers, in a sense, their kids grow up and leave them. We all lose our children in some way or another. But in this myth, the daughter Kore, the spring maiden, she was the future. She was the renewal. And when Zeus said to his brother Hades, god of the underworld, well, you need a wife, just take her, without asking her permission, he was upsetting the divine order of things, that the maiden grows into the mother, and the mother grows into the crone, and then dies, and there's a cycle that is constant. And that brings us, the renewal of the harvest and all that we need. So, the idea at the end of the myth, when Demeter disguises herself as a beggar woman and works in a palace as a nursemaid, and she's putting the baby in the fire every night to make him immortal. And the queen comes out and catches her at this and freaks out, banishes her from the palace. And at that point, Demeter throws off her disguise and rises up in her full glory. And the queen goes, oh no, I've insulted the goddess. What do I do? And she drops to her knees. And Demeter says, build me a temple and reestablish my rights, and everything will move forward again. Oh, yes, and return my daughter from the underworld.
Right. And, and then there's that lovely negotiation scene.
Yes.
In the mythos. And I get, sitting back, being, looking at this, I'm like, how do gods negotiate this? Well, she can have 6 months here and 6 months there. And I think of, today with children and their parents and careers, they all have to go through this negotiation scene. That's one of the stories I think would bring much comfort to people today.
Yeah, I think so. But it's also saying that if we want things to go right in this world, and many things are going terribly wrong, especially in terms of nature and the feminine, we need to reestablish the rights of the goddess. We need to rebuild the temples. Look at how many churches, synagogues, and mosques there are in the world compared to the number of established goddess temples. I mean, there are some, but really it's a small fraction compared to
there is
institutions.
And what gets me with that is the number of for sale signs that have appeared up over the past, 2 years on these places. The Church of All Worlds done a lot of good work. Like, it wasn't just plays and, having cakes and out. There was a lot of work y'all guys done in the communities that you served.
Yes.
Do you foresee a movement like that coming again?
I see a movement of rising feminism and women. And I think the first movement of feminism was women, didn't have jobs and they were stuck at home and they wanted to be, go out into the workplace and make their own money. And, and so that was opened up, and there's still a long way for that to go. But in that, women were becoming more like men.
Right.
And the wave of feminism now is, what are the values that are missing from the public conversation of how we create this world? And the feminine values of love and compassion and connection and beauty. I mean, we don't want to create a world without beauty,
Right.
And those are missing from the discussion. And so the next wave of feminism is bringing the feminine back into the conversation. And I think the movement of the goddess, and, one of my websites is sherisesmovement.com, is women awakening to their feminine power, not trying to be like men.
Right. And ditching the power suits and ditching the, dragon lady personas, which every dragon lady I've ever sat down with, it's like, you really just want to bake cookies and slap these men around.
Well, I don't know about that, but
Oh yeah, especially like CEOs, you see them come into a company, Yahoo example, all that, and they start making changes for the better of not only the workers but the customers.
Yeah. And they have found that companies, the Fortune 500 companies that have more women on the board of directors or even women CEOs have better stock performance. They make more money. They have less turnover among their employees. Basically it runs better.
Right. And, one of the leading CEOs, the CEO of YouTube, is a female. And she has, when she walked in there, everyone was like, yeah, YouTube, they're going to be gone in 4 years, 4 or 5 years. I'm sorry. She's took on Netflix and like she's competing and going, watch me. But also keeping a beat with her creators.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you an interesting question, and you don't really discuss it in your book. Where do you see the goddess moving now on the earth?
I see her moving into partnership. Now, I'm part of a grassroots movement right now of the Founding Mothers movement, which is, when we look at democracy. The
Mm-hmm.
first democracies of Greece included all levels of society except women. Slaves could vote, women could not vote. So it wasn't a true democracy. And democracy in the US and in most countries of the world that have it was, here we say it was the founding fathers. Well, once again, it's standing on one leg. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
it's rather teetering right now. And we need founding mothers along with founding fathers. We cannot give birth to a new age, which is, I think, what humanity is about right now,
Right.
giving birth to a new way of living in a new era on this planet. And we can't give birth to something without the feminine as part of it, because we're the ones that give birth. Now, we can't give birth without the masculine also to co-create,
Right.
So I'm not saying women do it alone, but we need the feminine to give birth to a new age. And that's what Hades discovered in the underworld. It was getting very
Right.
crowded down there, and he couldn't get rid of the souls that were dying unless, unless he had a wife to give birth and send them back into their next lifetime.
Exactly. And, starting to move that along, because otherwise he would have been more populist than, Zeus's project of the Earth plane. And Zeus was getting a little pissed, to be honest, there, because, Zeus has to have the best of everything.
Yeah, right.
Also, I think that, for us to actually get moving, we need to be talking about the women leaders of the past that led, but in quiet. Dolly Madison, Jackie Onassis, Nancy Reagan. Like, these women done more than look pretty.
Yes.
Eleanor Roosevelt. She's the whole reason that when you drive down the interstate, there are flowers and trees, and you can, in royal area, where approachable, they have to put a barrier to make travel. And she's actually probably the reason we have the interstates we have now.
Yeah. So there, what most people don't realize is that between around 1850 and 1900, 2 women ruled more than half the population of the world. And that was Queen Victoria of the British Empire and Emperor Cixi of the Chinese Empress, Empress Cixi. And they each ruled for about 50 years. Queen Victoria did it with having born 8 children. And because of the population of China and the British Empire at that time, their 2 empires together were more than half the population, and for 50 years. And Empress Cixi brought into China international currency. She brought in electricity. She brought in the railroads. She put an end to foot binding. She put an end to the practice of death by 1,000 cuts, which was essentially torture. So she really pushed China forward in and served it very well. And yeah, she had to be brutal in some ways to hold on to power. That's the way it was. But there have been and these are both examples of queens, empresses, serving humanity for the better, not for power, not for me, look at me, I alone can do it, but, for the service of creating a better world.
Well, look at this current UK king versus his mother. I mean, she was a force to be reckoned with. Her daughter, which if her father had signed the proclamation that she ended up signing, would have took her place, is still a force to be reckoned with. The hardest working royal there is.
Yeah, and ruled for a long time.
Yeah. Very
and
much
behind the scenes. Yeah,
and I think that Queen Anne, Princess Royal Anne, I think she should be, commonly regarded as queen, does more of the moving than shaking the most 500 CEOs.
Yeah, and we only have how many heads of state out of 194 countries. I think there's like 22 countries that have women as a head of state. It's really quite the minority. In this country, in the House and Senate, it's about 25%. The House of Representatives is maybe 26%, but we're still quite a minority politically. And we've never in this country had a woman president. We've just had our first woman vice president. And I suspect if we do get a woman president, it's going to be because the president dies and the vice president takes over rather than getting elected, because it's so hard for people to look at a woman and see her in that position of leadership, because
Right.
women lead differently. If she's too masculine, well, then she's uppity and she's nasty. And if she's
Hmm.
too feminine, then she's seen as not having what it takes to do the job.
Right. But if we look at, Germany, the chancellor there, she brought Germany through the hardest times without question.
Yeah, she did. She brought it through the pandemic, and she also held compassion for the immigration. And
Hmm.
some people didn't agree with her on that, but she ruled for quite some time, and she ruled well.
Yes, very much so. So, in your book, you share practices and meditations for people to connect more directly with the goddess. You refer to it as coming home um, to the goddess. Explain this process.
Well, first of all, the word home you can see as an anagram for Holy Order of Mother Earth. And, when I said Demeter wanted us to build a temple and reestablish her rights, that's the Holy Order of Mother Earth. When we have that
Hmm.
in order and we're, lining our society up with the order of nature, we are more likely to be sustainable. So coming home is coming home to the earth. It's coming home to your body. You say home is where the heart is. And so coming home to each other. And, as a priestess in the pagan religion and, in the years that I served in the Church of All Worlds, when people came to our community and experienced our rites and rituals, so many times they said, this feels like coming home.
Hmm.
Something they were looking for all their life. And when they found it, it's like, this is familiar. This makes sense. I feel accepted. I feel like I'm coming home. And so coming home to the goddess is coming back to something that was always there and yet has been evolving. Just like as an adult, you're not going to go back to your mother and breastfeed. As a culture,
Hmm.
we're not going at this point in time back to a purely agricultural society. We're past that. And so the goddess is evolving, and the feminine is
Hmm.
evolving, and the feminine and the masculine are evolving together and separately, and our ideas of gender are evolving. So it is, sometimes we describe the religion as this religion we are remembering and inventing together. And I like that because some of it is remembering what was and finding, the ancient texts and the ancient beliefs and the rituals, but most of that was lost. So
Hmm.
we have to invent a lot of it.
We do, or we have to rediscover it.
Yes, or rediscover. And in that, it gets to evolve.
Right. And then there's things that we're dealing with now. An example is, who's the goddess of the cell phones?
Goddess of what?
Cell phones.
Sofas.
Cell phones.
Oh, cell phones. Yes, yes. I'm sorry.
You know, you're fine. And growing that, because very much so when things came about, it was like, okay, what's the qualities of this item? Well, who's its patron? And I think we need to get, if we're going to do that within the pagan community, we need to bring it up to speed.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, I, for a very long time, thank, Ryder and Waite and Patricia for bringing the tarot to unification with the Rider Waite deck.
hmm
It needs updated. We're now more than 100 years old.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Yeah.
You know,
And now we have thousands of offshoots of that deck,
we are
various.
back to the same point we were in 1901 when Ryder and Waite was going literally from house to house, reader to reader, and going, show us your cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So,
know,
yeah. And, there's so many tarot decks now where people have taken offshoots, and
hmm
taken liberties with the Rider Waite deck, but I always go back to that one because it was, it's kind of the die-hard original. Yeah.
very much so.
And
In my mind, there's two decks. There is Ryder and Waite, don't care about the art, Ryder and Waite, and Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck. One of the two If you know those two decks, you can read any other deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good way for people to learn about archetypes, because that's
Very
not
much so.
taught in our schools,
Nah.
and we're not given the rich mythology of a culture. And even in, as science took over, the word myth became equated with a lie. Like you say, oh,
Right.
that's just a myth, right? But the myths even though they weren't true in the literal sense, they were true in the sense of being allegories for how humans lived together in a society and lived with the planet. And they had a deeper truth. And, again, myth and science are like two legs. We took a giant step forward with science, but we need myth of, science tells us what and how, but it doesn't tell us why. It doesn't tell us why we're here, what we're here to create. You can't understand the economic system by analyzing the ink on the dollar bill,
Exactly. And what I find interesting is science is finally catching up to things we've known for centuries.
That's right.
That even the most newest basic pagan knows instantly. They're forever and a day. We always said the north is where you make it because it's a magnetic flow. Oh, gee, the magnetic flow is changing on the planet or flowing differently. Oh, gee, ley lines are an actual thing. Oh, gee, actually burning sage does actually kill viruses in your house. And I'm reading some of these scientific studies that come out, and I go, you should have went to your New Age shop. You could have saved thousands of dollars. They would have taught you this.
And the science is important. I wouldn't denigrate the science. In many ways, the science put a stop to some of the witch burnings because, it said, no, this person's crops didn't fail because you were cursed, and, we had a more scientific explanation for things. So science brought us many things, but it's not the whole story.
Right. It's far from the whole story. Yeah. It's also, are you familiar with the idea that there are multiple realities occurring all at once?
Oh, sure.
And alternate universes.
Well, all you have to do is look at this planet or look down from a high building at a city and you go, millions of people are here living millions of different realities.
Right. Can you imagine for a moment that instead of the decreasing of the goddess, the increasing of the goddess and what that society looks like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it slows down. We're not going at hyperspeed all the time, getting burned out. It's more about quality than quantity. It's more about aesthetics than efficiency. It is more about connection than separation. It's more about cooperation than domination. So I think that, and goddess circles, goddess worshippers and pagans tend to worship in a circle rather than rows of rows of pews looking at a man out front. It's more egalitarian. It's more co-created. It's more collaborative. And so I think that when you have a more collaborative framework, you harvest the intelligence of more people. One person can only know so much, and it's going to be fallible. We're all fallible. But, if we have a team, we have people to fill in our blind spots. And I think we have a way to harvest each person's intelligence. And I think, one of the great tools that we're having now that allows us to collaborate worldwide is the internet. We didn't have that before. And this allows people who are looking for some kind of scientific cure to such and such to connect with somebody over in China that's been working on that all their life, that in a future age we never would have known about.
And it's allowing us to move very much more faster and also to combine knowledges. You spoke about being part of founders, founders of the Mother. I find that very interesting because if we look back at pagan history, we, see the works of, as soon as I hear that, I think of the Church of the Circle of the Old Mother, which was Maxine Saunders' work. and how important that was within, Wiccan history and everything. How close is that comparison?
In comparison to what? Let me make sure I
The
understand.
founder of the Mothers and the Temple of the Mother.
Oh,
Those
well,
workings.
I'm talking about the Founding Mothers movement, and this movement is really making a stand for peace and women's rights and seeing them as intricately connected.
Okay.
In my card of the peacemaker, I talk about how when women are part of a peace process, the negotiations, the peace lasts longer and is more accepted by the people. And yet only one woman has been allowed to sign an international peace treaty. And I think it's like, 9 women, I forget the numbers, but a small percentage of women have won the Nobel Peace Prize. So women are typically not admitted into the peace process. And yet, because they're more collaborative. They're more, let's see what this side wants, let's see what that side wants, and how can we negotiate between them? The masculine model sees that as a weakness. Oh,
Right.
we're kowtowing to the enemy. But the feminine model doesn't see it as an enemy. It says,
Right.
What can we do here that's a win-win situation?
Very much so. And I think that that's very important. So with that, you've got your deck out. You've got the goddess, the book, The Goddess, which, let's talk about the book, The Goddess. When is it? What's your perfect reader? When are they ready for that knowledge?
When are who ready?
Anybody wanting to pick it up, like if they were looking to study into the goddess energy, quote unquote, who should be hearing the knocking at the door?
Oh, anyone, men and women. And let me even say that some people think the goddess religion is something for women only. No, that is not the case at all. In fact, the old goddess religions incorporated men. They insisted on it, that men were part of it. And having been, part of the pagan community for a long time, there's a pretty much equal number of men and women. And the men are quite happy hanging out with women who, they can see as goddesses and being treated like a god.
Right. As a traditional father here, I love it. I love having that equality and, that virgin, that working in collaboration. Yeah, I'm normally surrounded by the women that are running things, but, my voice is just equally heard. And, looking at it, I think that a lot of people in the pagan community have a lot easier time working with goddess energy because it's untainted, and students very much gravitate to their goddess of choice much easier than working with that masculine side, the god energy, because it is so tainted in their views. And it's a lot of inner working. I always tell my students, you're an onion. We've got to peel back the layers to get back to your real core.
And here's what I'd like to say about that. The goddess has always been here. It's just knowledge of her and being able to talk to her and knowing the myths of her has been suppressed. So when we come back to the goddess, we find a freedom. We find, I don't have to live in this suppression anymore. And that suppression is there for men and it's there for women. We're all suppressed by this denial of the feminine, and the men have to be a certain way, and any slightly feminine characteristic that come out is suspect and, a subject of derision for men. And they don't have much freedom with that. They don't have much freedom in the way they dress. They don't have much freedom in the way they express themselves. Women don't have much freedom. So, acknowledging what is already there and has always been there, but has been denied, is therapeutic. It's like when you acknowledge something in yourself that has always been there that you've pushed down, that makes you more whole as a person. And when we acknowledge what's always been there but has been pushed down, we become more whole as a society.
We do. And that's when we find our true power, our true connectivity. And when we stop the knee bowing and start the heart living, which I think your book really strongly expresses, is when we start really getting to the core of what we're here for. And we
Yes.
get that balance.
Yeah. And the goddess religion did not make us fall to our knees and, be diminished and worship something beyond us. It said, no, she's in you, she's in me. We
Right.
co-create with the divine. We're not, we don't have to abase ourselves.
Right. And we don't have to strip away ourselves to fit within the mold.
Exactly. That's my point. And that's that suppression where you have to strip away parts of yourself. That's not fun for anybody.
Well, not only is it not fun, but you have that core screaming out of the soul. And I think that's where we start seeing a lot of the problems that we see today. People unhappy, people burnt out, people just can't do it anymore. I also think that, we're seeing much more call of the goddess back to the fire. Maybe not back to the cathedrals, because I don't know. In my opinion, I don't think you open a cathedral for the Morrigan, she's going to go, where's the soup kitchen?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the hell? Why is this whole room here for a circle? There's supposed to be 13 to 38 of you. Do your math. But I don't need all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't need these false edifices that separate us from nature.
Right. Very much so.
And the raw power of the gods.
Yeah. So you've got your website, which is going to be in the show notes, and I'm going ahead and pop it into the chat here. You got a lot of stuff going on over there, and it's really just a hub.
Yes, that's right. AnodeaJudith.com. That's ANODEAJUDITH.com is that's my name. And so that's kind of my clearinghouse. But I also have SheRises.com, which comes from my cards, and it's SheRisesMovement.com. Excuse me. She Rises Movement. And that is about the movement I'm trying to create with women, recognizing these archetypal forces that have been suppressed in them and finding them as superpowers.
Very much so. And, you are, a great international speaker, you best-selling author, you do a lot of workshops. She also has courses online, so I don't want to hear anything about, I can't get here or I can't get there. She has courses online. Get over there and take those. Blogs and interviews. But what's next for you?
What's next? I think working on this Founding Mothers movement. And I'm part of the Evolutionary Leaders Council, and we're working on something called the HOLA movement, which is, people coming together for a new kind of unity in the way that we govern and the way we educate and the way we do medicine and the way we do all aspects of life. So, and, really my passion has been evolution. How does a society evolve, and what are we evolving into, and how can we make that evolution conscious rather than passive? What are we, it's a design question. What kind of world do we want to design? And I think we're here to create heaven on earth, not to go out of our bodies to some heaven up there, but to create heaven right here on earth. A friend of mine who passed away recently said, we don't need to raise hell to change the world. We just need to lower heaven.
I like that.
Yeah. We don't need to raise hell.
And maybe you just align it a little bit. Not only that, but I think Hades would get aggravated. He worked really hard at building his kingdom down there. It's like, I don't need this raise. I was very happy in my plane of existence.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And the underworld is an important place, he was a god of riches,
Right.
It's a place of transformation. And that's another thing about the goddess religion. It's not all light and fairies, it's cyclic. It's life and death. It's light and dark. It says there's time for action and time for rest. The crone is the queen of death. She's the queen of transformation. And we have to let parts of ourselves die to be reborn in a new form.
And, I think that, women get aggravated when you refer to them as a crone. They don't see it as the honor that it is. And when women enter into that queen era, I really would like to see a lot more celebration of the pagan community when they enter that range. You know,
Yes.
when they've raised their children,
Mm-hmm.
be it spiritual children or physical children, because we all have them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find that there's a lot of work on that area, and I was really glad to see that you've done a lot of work of that in your book
Mm-hmm.
and speaking to those qualities.
Yeah, now some people say the word crone has its root in the word crown, which
Mm-hmm.
implied queen. And I looked up the etymology on that, and it didn't quite pan out, but
Right.
I've heard that here and there from people. So, I debated whether to make the crone the queen category or a separate category. But I just think if we're updating into the modern world, we have a lot of women serving in a queen capacity. And that doesn't just mean they were married to a king. They can be queens in their own right. Oprah is a prime
Right.
modern example of a queen who has a huge media empire and whose purpose really has been to serve humanity.
Right. And I think that she serves an important role, especially in a pagan growth cycle,
Mm-hmm.
because she's already ran her covens. She's already had to figure out, okay, we've got 100 people and 13 of them forgot to bring them their dishes. What are we going to do? She's already dealt with the facilitation and all that, and she can be that wisdom seeker, but she isn't ready to be the crone that goes back over into the corner and goes, I'll teach a class maybe for a half hour if I'm in the mood to.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's still kicking, she's in her 70s
Right.
now and she's still as powerful as ever. She's not slowing down.
Exactly. But I think that that clarification of king and queen need to be there.
Yeah.
I think that we need more etymology of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we also need more mythos of it because there's a ton of mythos on the maidens. There's a ton of mythos on the crones. There's a ton on the mother goddess. There's also, I think, more mythos on the queens and kings and that phase of life. So I'm hoping to see more authors bring that out like you did. And I'm really glad that you brought up the gender and gender, that it's divine masculine, divine feminine. Actually, on one of my other shows on Monday, we're going to be talking about that because that's so confusing to a lot of people just entering into the movements. So you've done a lot of great work. I hope that I see more from you. Please bring it back to us. We'd love to sit and talk with you more. So where can they get the book? When is Amazon releasing it? All that.
It's back from the printer, so it's available now. You can get it on Amazon. Goddess Blessed Reunions with the Feminine Face of the Divine. You could also find it on my website, sherisesmovement.com or anodeajudith.com. But get it from Amazon. It's good to have Amazon numbers go up and you pay a little less for it. And tell your friends about it. And, it's got lots of little stories of people's personal encounters with the goddess, including 2 of mine. And, it's something you could just read in the bathroom if you wanted, and read a story that's 3 pages long and just have that when you have a few minutes to be inspired. And as you read these stories, you may find her coming into your life in your own way. It's not like we have to go seek her. She will find you.
Yes, she always chooses you.
Yeah. I didn't go looking to publish this book. The publisher came to me. I met her in a Zoom breakout session. And when she found out about my She Rises card, she asked me to write a book on the goddess. And I had served the goddess all my life. So I said, okay, but I didn't go looking for it. It found me.
Very much so. And that's the way they do. Everyone knows I work with the Morgon. Me and my lady have a lovely relationship. But, Kuan Yin decided, you look like you can ride a white dragon. Let's take you for a ride for months. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to go visit Kuan Yin and work with that energy for a little bit. So that's been very enlightening.
Yeah. And I do talk about Kuan Yin in the book. Yeah.
You do. What was your most interesting story that you've heard of a goddess choosing choosing somebody?
Oh, well, let's see. Just the other day, I was talking to one of the authors in the book, Eden Amadora about how did you find your way to the goddess? And she said, well, she found me. Eden is an extraordinarily beautiful woman, used to be a world-class model. And she's also a performer. And she was performing once, and someone came up to her and said, you're a priestess of the goddess. And she said, what? What's that? Never heard of it. And she took a training, the 13 Moon, and she is an awesome priestess now and teaches other women and people and trains. But it just sort of found her. She wasn't looking for it. It was like the goddess, someone just saw it in her and said, I'm going to awaken that in you.
Wow, how cool. All right, darling. Come back when the muses entertain you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a great discussion.
I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed your writing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to speak with someone who has some knowledge of the subject.
Very much so. And, anytime you want to come talk about them, I'd love to have you back on and enjoy a cup of coffee with you. Merry meet, merry part, my dear.
Merry meet and merry meet again.
Are you ready for an enchanting journey of self-discovery and empowerment? Dive into the mystical world of Wicca with our courses guided by Lord Aeson Knight. Unveil Wicca's secrets, explore fundamental principles, and delve into essential topics like deity relationships and the purpose of rituals. Aeson Knight, a third-degree high priest, shares his wisdom through life coaching lessons, guiding you towards a brighter future. Step into the inner circle of enlightenment. Enroll today to embark on a journey toward a more empowered you. Click the link to take your first step into the magical circle.
Ready to join the Psychic Coffee Shop Network? By becoming our patron, you'll unlock exclusive content from Aeson Knight, host of the Psychic Coffee Shop podcast and co-host of the Mountain Bears podcast, alongside the tech-savvy Techie Joe. Choose from subscription options ranging from Tall $1, Grande $5, to Venti $10 per month, supporting us in covering production costs and beyond. Depending on your subscription level, enjoy discounts on private readings, free access to classes and special events, behind-the-scenes extras, and the chance to participate in station meetings. Plus, you'll get early access to new content and the opportunity to shape future topics. We'll acknowledge your support in the credits of our videos. Don't wait. Brew some magic and join us today as a valued member. Link in the show description. Aeson Knight, your gateway to a transformed life. In a world where anyone can claim to be a life coach, Aeson stands out as a true professional with the skills and qualifications to guide you on your journey to success. So why invest in a personal life coach? Let's explore the game-changing benefits Aeson brings to the table. Ever find it hard to stay committed to change on your own? Aeson's expertise ensures you stay on track. With him as your coach, that internal drive kicks in, motivating you to keep your promises and achieve your goals. Making a change is tough, but Aeson makes it 1,000 times easier. He's your unwavering support, guiding you through challenges, pushing you beyond your limits, and believing in you even when you doubt yourself. Friends are great, but they may not always want to see you succeed. Aeson, on the other hand, is dedicated solely to your success. He removes negativity and limiting beliefs, giving you the tailored support you need. Forget endless hours deciphering advice from books and videos. Aeson is your shortcut to effective change. He saves you time and money by offering personalized attention, guiding you toward the tools and lessons that will truly work for you. Ready for a better tomorrow? Book your discovery call with Aeson Knight now. Take the first step toward the life you've always dreamed of. Aeson Knight, your partner in transformation. Start your journey today.
Good evening, darling. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you this evening?
Doing well, doing well. Had a lovely discussion.
Oh, very nice, very nice. I was noticing that one was taking a minute.
It did. I didn't want to let her go. That happens. It's one of those. She's one of those leaders in the community that I could sit down and kill a couple pots of coffee with and like bounce ideas off of and get her book. It's good.
There you go. Hey, Brenda. But yeah, no, it sounded like a really great conversation.
It was. Right. So, darling, do you have an Are You the Asshole for us tonight?
Yes, I already sent it to you. So this is a Would I Be the Asshole? Would I be the asshole? For doing a 23andMe test, knowing this might reveal my secret existence to my bio mom's side of the family. Sorry, this title sounds so dramatic. It really, in reality, it's more just complicated. So I, 32 female, was adopted as a baby. It was supposed to be a closed adoption, but my biological parents' names were visible on the paperwork that came from the hospital/adoption agency. I was able to track down my bio mom about 10 years ago. We exchanged a few emails and talked on the phone, and she sent me photos of my bio siblings who were not placed for adoption. I expressed interest in meeting my bio siblings, and my bio mom said she was sure they'd like to meet me also, but she needed time to break the news of my existence to them because she felt some type of way about having kept it a secret for 20 plus years. As I said, that was 10 years ago. Biomom never reached out again to let me know she told the rest of the family about me, nor did I hear from any of them. So I assume my existence is still a secret. And when I did try sending her an email about something unrelated, it was actually a medical history question. At one point after that, I never got a response. So my read is that she's not interested in further contact with me, which is understandable and more than fine. But on the other side of the coin, I was never able to find my bio dad, although I did try for a while. I've recently been considering submitting my DNA to 23andMe on the chance that maybe I can find him or family members on his side. And also, I'd just like to know more about my ethnicity and heritage. But I know that if I do so, anyone on my bio mom's side that has submitted DNA or does in the future, they'll see that I exist. I've respected my bio mom's wishes not to reach out directly to my bio siblings, even though I have their contact information, and I can't shake the feeling that doing 23andMe is just a sneaky way of circumventing that and acting all innocent. It feels kind of crappy and like it would be a betrayal. I considered trying to send my bio mom a heads up that I was planning to submit my DNA, but since our interaction ended with her ghosting me, I worry that sounds like a threat or an ultimatum. So, would I be the asshole if I submitted to 23andMe, and or should I try to warn my bio mom first?
No, you wouldn't be an asshole. And no, I wouldn't. So I would, not give a heads up. And here's why. In my justification for this.
Okay.
One, she's acting like, you get to remain the secret, which is cute. But on the other side of that coin, she's taken away the will of the other children.
I think your last nicety was the fact that, because here's the backup. If you back all the way up, this was supposed to have been a closed adoption. You were never supposed to have known her name to begin with. So having known the name, being able to find the name in the paperwork, you basically gave her all the heads up that she could have ever hoped to have had.
Right.
And that was the gift. So at this point, because the reality could have been, is that 10 years ago you did a 23andMe, and oopsie daisy, turns out mom had an extra child. This would not be new information or a new experience for people who share DNA results on 23andMe. Because this is happening all over the place. People are finding out that they are not the children of the people they think they are. Or finding out they have whole other families, whole other genetic information going on. Or finding out that like they were conceived with artificial insemination, and they have huge segments of like same bio dad families. That's creating its own issue. But here's where it kind of becomes a thing. I think at this point, you have to ultimately decide you tried. She didn't want to be part of this process. And so ultimately, whether she did what she was saying she was going to do or not, you have every right to submit your DNA. Otherwise, you start getting into this, well, what if scenarios.
Right.
Because right now we're using the same DNA information to track down like serial killers based on DNA through family matches. You know, I'm sure that serial killer wasn't really working for that.
Right.
Wasn't thinking, you know, and is probably a little PO'd.
Right.
About, you know, I didn't volunteer my DNA for this directory.
Right.
But because some cousin wants to know, well, like, just how Irish are we, man? Or whatever.
Right.
That suddenly we start building connections to me.
Right.
But that's where we are with this.
Right.
We don't own our DNA.
Well, it's not that we don't own our DNA. We don't own other people's DNA.
And that's the point.
Right. I know. And, you know, one of our viewers has a recommendation here. You know, heritage information is better on 23andMe. You'll find more connections on Ancestry. We're trying to match quite a few adopted out or secret cousins from Ancestry matches.
Good deal. Oh, so I found out I have a half brother on dad's side from Ancestry. Okay, cool.
Right.
No, yeah. But that's also part of the thing. Is it also depends upon who signs up where and does what.
Right.
So it's almost a thing of like, yeah, 23andMe is the big name, Ancestry is another name, and you may just have to like kind of throw your DNA out there.
Right.
But yeah, that's but it also becomes the realities of like 30 some years ago, no one was thinking this was ever going to be a thing.
Right.
Like you adopt a kid, you don't specify or like this is a closed adoption.
Right.
You're not supposed to hear about this kid again.
Right.
You know, unless you and the child both opt to like list yourselves on a registry and both out yourselves for this connection. This was never supposed to happen. This child was never supposed to call you, let alone be able to go like, you know, do a finger stick or whatever and mail it off. Yeah, jaw swab. And mail it off. And all of a sudden, here's all your results. No one was expecting this. And sometimes it's also the connections that occurred that made the child possible.
Right.
And again, this is popping this open for tons of families.
Right. You know, and there's always a choice if you're willing to be contacted by them or not. You get the choices there.
In what sense?
Well, she could determine if, like, her sister attempts to contact her, I want to hear from you.
Oh, as in, like, you're talking about the bio sister that doesn't know that OP exists?
Right. Because
Right.
when it pops up, it'll be possible sibling or first cousin.
Right.
Right.
And that is an option there.
Right.
I'm just talking about from the fact that, like, bio mom,
Right.
like, nowhere in this is bio mom expecting.
Right.
Like, as in 30 years ago, this would ever be a thing.
Right.
And, like, the closed adoption was supposed to be the closed adoption. This was never supposed to come up in her life again.
Right.
Unless both she and the adopted child decided.
Right.
Like, she could spend the rest of her life looking for this child. The child could spend the rest of her life or their life
Right.
looking for her.
Right.
Unless they both decided it was never supposed to happen.
Right.
Now we have 23andMe, Ancestry.com, and all these other sites that fundamentally make those agreements
Right.
and those situations, poof.
Right.
Submit your DNA and wait around for a while. Someone else is going to get the same bright idea. And even if you don't, if you, the adoptee, or you, the parent of the adoptee, even if none of you, like, you really consent to this necessarily, it's going to pop up.
Right.
Surprise. Poof, connection.
Right.
I don't know that it's inherently a bad thing. I know that it's going to be really, really scary for people who thought this was a closed chapter of their life. They just weren't going to have to deal with this.
Right.
Or
figuring out, no, there's actually more out there. There's more, going on. And, can we get past the idea that, parents are white saints that never made other choices? Like, how do we get past that as a culture?
I think we're already past that as a culture. I think your parents can be whoever they are. And the choices they made were the choices they made. I just know that there are people that, like, this is traumatic. This was a secret they never intended to share.
Right.
Like, this isn't always just some cute little story of, well, I was 18 and I wanted to go to college, but I messed up with my boyfriend, and, well, we thought it was a good idea to, it's not always this cute little story. Sometimes these stories are very traumatic and painful, and there's a lot of crap that goes with them.
Right.
And, like, this wasn't a decision made lightly, and in some instances wasn't a decision that they made.
Right.
Like, as in, you're opening up cans of worms when this occurs. And sometimes what you find at the end of that can of worms is a bigger can of worms.
Right.
Like, it's really easy to get into this, like, very unsolved mysteries version of it, where it's like, we were just so desperately looking for you for all these years. Keep in mind, this is from like 30 years ago, little more.
Right.
The Unsolved Mysteries version. And those were pretty cool TV shows. They were. For people who were legitimately trying to find each other, and it wasn't working out.
Right.
This isn't that.
Right.
There's also lots of instances where, oh God, no, this was never supposed to happen.
Right.
Like, you weren't ever supposed to know about me. You weren't ever supposed to be able to find me. I don't need this. Like, you could undo decades of mental health.
Right.
Like, that's one knock on a door you don't want to have.
Right.
Like, again, not every situation's great. I think that I don't think you're the asshole for doing it. I don't think anyone is the asshole for doing it. That's not my point. I do think, though, as you do it, you must tread carefully and try to be understanding that this isn't all, rose-tinted glasses, sunshine, and lollipops.
Exactly.
You could be walking into God only knows what.
Well, and you could be walking into everything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because even with the biomom in this situation,
right.
I get the feeling there's a little more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, she has other younger siblings.
Right.
Biomom had no problem with. But then there's her.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, that could be your classic. Well, I was 18 and I messed around with my boyfriend. Right. Simple story, old story. We've heard that one a million times. It's okay, whatever. No one really faults mom. We understand, blah, blah, blah. It's not that uncommon of a story. It's not that traumatic necessarily of a story.
Right.
It's just, poor timing to have a child.
Right.
But then you get into other situations where it's like, this could be the child that is a product of an affair that shouldn't have occurred, or inappropriate contact with an older person that shouldn't have occurred, like such as a stepfather or whatever. You can start spiraling out into some really ugly situations.
Right.
That then puts you in an interesting, or puts biomom in a very interesting situation.
Well, and it puts everybody into an unexpected situation.
Or it could just be, I wasn't ever supposed to have to deal with this. Why are you contacting me?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Some people just close that door and it's like, nope, we had to seal that one shut because I can't.
Right. Right.
I'm just saying.
That's okay. And I think taking that view is important, but also understanding where things are going to be at.
Yeah. Well, and then the addendum of sometimes what you think you're going to find is just some answers. And in some situations, that's not what you find. What you find are a lot of questions.
Right.
That, like, every piece you find out is more confusing than the last. And, like, it never makes sense.
Right.
So, I hate that for people. I would love for it to be, like, this very straightforward, linear, like, those were some really great episodes of, like, Unsolved Mysteries where they hire the private investigators and suddenly they, Unsolved Mysteries connects them together and it's just heartfelt love, like, wonderful story.
Right.
And
that's
great.
That.
And that's not it. That's not always it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes, it's a great and wonderful thing. But sometimes it's just, oh, wow, you probably didn't want to know how this happened.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, for every heartwarming story,
right,
there can equally be a version that, like, oh, God, this is a disaster.
Right. And, this disaster can even be even worse.
All right. So I always encourage people, or I would encourage people, if you're going to do this, I really hope you're working with a support network, a therapist especially, so that when you start finding information, you have a moment there to have someone help you process it. That it may not be the joyous news you wanted to hear, but someone who can actually help you professionally process that.
Exactly. All right. So the poll is up. Would they be an asshole for inserting their DNA on 23andMe? Now, granted, I don't know. I recommend Heritage because it's currently cheaper.
Ancestry. I like throw your DNA at all of them.
Yeah. And
Just
pay attention, especially if you are in a demographic that may not be, an easy demographic, because they'll mess it up. Like the number of Native Americans that supposedly came, that according to the DNA says that they're Chinese. Or Romney, guys, if you're Romney, you may get DNA, you may be picked up across the world.
well, and then there's the realities of the fact that this is extrapolated data.
Right.
And so it's not always perfect. Sometimes it pops
Right.
weird things.
Right.
So just know,
Right.
it's not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us God.
Right.
It's based on what they know and other tests that have been done.
Right.
So sometimes it's a little off, and they disagree.
Yeah.
They often disagree. That's the other weird thing. Like those numbers and percentages and all that, like sometimes they're a little wonky.
Very much so.
All right. So moving right along.
Yep. But the poll is up.
Yes.
Go for it.
All right. How do relationships, quote, just happen? When I ask people how they ended up with their spouse or long-term partner, they often say something to the effect of, it just happened, or neither of us were really looking. Is this just something people say because it sounds more romantic than admitting to being intentional and putting forth effort? Or are successful relationships usually something you accidentally stumble into? Is the secret to finding a relationship getting off our dating advice and simply not caring until I randomly find myself going out to coffee with some woman I bumped into at the dairy aisle? If I were to somehow stop caring about ever being in a relationship, I'd probably just pursue my solitary or male-dominated hobbies, not really paying much attention to how I dress outside of work, and choose to spend my Saturday nights in with a good book. I highly doubt I'd ever meet anyone if I just stopped caring. As it is, I do try out hobbies that many women are involved in. I do make an effort to dress better, and I do try to get out and be social most weekends, but it's because I'm making an effort, not because it's my own default behavior. Take it away. I don't even know where to start on that one.
Well, here's the thing. You're going to change. Okay? If you're already putting on the face, and first of all, I'm speaking from experience. One. Second of all, chill. Because if you're already putting on a face, you're going to put on other faces. And what are you going to do? Every day get up and get dressed? Get up and change yourself every day, before your husband wakes up. Like these are faces and masks that are very hard to keep up with and very problematic. So that's when it's like, where's this going to go? So if you're just dressing up to be dressing up, there's an issue there. There's an issue of everything. Do relationships just happen? Yeah, they do. Most people aren't looking for a relationship when it's permanent.
It does seem to be the way it works out. Like, here's the problem. When you're looking for a relationship, what typically happens is you get a little involved in the process, but not the outcome.
Right.
If that makes any sense. Like, you end up getting really involved in, like, follow the dating advice, go to the dating websites, do the dating thing, make sure you're on a date, evaluate your date, try not to act stupid in front of your date, Do all the appropriate dating things. And then just keep doing it. Because
Right.
eventually, buckshot approach, if you go out on enough dates, you'll meet the right person, and then that's it, you're good.
Right.
No. I think that's where dating doesn't work.
Right.
I don't mean this in a don't ever go on dates, don't ever go out, don't ever. I'm not saying that. Like, you can intentionally go out and try to date. You can go out and and always be open to a date.
Right.
But don't necessarily sit here and have this like quantity over quality concept.
Right.
Like, you're just like machine gun approaching the world. Hi, are you the one? Hi, are you the one? Hi, are you the one?
Right.
Hi, are you the one? Like, you can't. It makes it real hard.
It does.
To really. There's a lot of people in the world to try to have that happen and work.
Right.
I've never appreciated that. I've never been able to do that.
It's like, I don't know. For me, this is going to sound really bad. I never look for relationships. They just happen. It starts with the conversation. And when you go into it without this clock of 3 dates and we've got to do this, 2 dates and we've got to do this, first date and I've got to look this way and act this way, you have a problem. And here's the problem. The problem happens when you're in the long-term relationship. And there's was a big story about this woman that her husband has never seen her without makeup for 50 years, or thinks that she has eyebrows or whatever. It's like, there's an issue. Yeah.
I don't know. I always have issues with this concept that like because I'm not thrown off on the like singles cruises and the speed dating. I'm really not. I think in some ways it may help people.
Right.
Like, if you get over your dating fear,
right,
I think it makes it easier to go on dates later. I just don't think anyone should ever think speed dating is going to be the way you find the one.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there are people that do, or at least, that's how it worked out for them. And that's great.
Right.
But, and I don't think that if you sit there and do the date after date after date after date, like assembly line,
right.
Again, I don't think that normally leads to good long-term potentials.
Right.
Because again, you get really locked in on the dating process.
Right.
And not necessarily spending time of like really qualitatively considering who you're with.
Right.
So I do think some relationships, or even most, just happen.
Right.
No, do I think that means that like speed dating and serial dating and, all of that is bad? If it gets you to the point that you can do that date,
right,
that just happens into a relationship, then all that was great.
Right.
I just don't think most people need that much dating experience. It's pretty fucking simple.
Right.
Don't be a dick. Bathe.
Right.
Wear clean clothes.
Right.
Try to like figure out something you're interested in and talk about it.
And focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, but that's the whole point about the just happens portion of relationships. Is generally the date doesn't even matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a point where it's like, okay, yeah, all right, cool. Like, it just kind of happened. Like, the opinions spent together, they were kind of obvious opinions, at least between people.
Right.
It just kind of works out after that.
Right.
Like, there's no...
Yeah, there's no anything. It's just as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think dating and speed dating and all that, I think it works really great for the pickup artist community and like
Right.
this, get laid as much as possible concept.
Right.
I think it actually in some cases ruins people for legitimate, like, long-term relationship dating. Because you get way too used to how to act like
Right.
someone else wants to date.
You're right.
Or how to manipulate people into basically going on dates with you and having sex with you.
Right.
Without necessarily displaying any real self or opinion.
Right.
So.
And I think that often that is because there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of views that can get very discordant in trying to keep up that appearance.
Huh? Oh, hey, Gwen.
Hi, Gwen.
Sorry. I mean, it does get very difficult if you're presenting a false self to keep that up. But more to the point, you're never going on a date with an actual human.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's very unlikely that you're seeing enough of someone to really evaluate them instead of this fake persona they adopted who's not too needy, not too clean, not too this, not too that. Says the right thing, does the right thing, is romantic enough without being too much.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like, most of the just happens relationships break all the rules.
Well, not only do they break all the rules, they really at times make the rules questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them sound like a hostage negotiation that worked out really well.
Yeah, that doesn't happen until they propose marriage.
Well, but you get what I'm saying, is some of them just sound like a weird, like, almost stalkery kind of thing. Or, like, if you read it wrong, you know what I mean? Like, it just, it broke all the rules. Like, wait 3 days to call. Nope, didn't happen.
Right.
Like, you start bouncing for all the rules.
Exactly.
Just happened. Relationships don't follow those.
Right. And, I will remind everybody that, dating advice books are lovely things, especially the book called The Rules. It's about this thick. It's perfect if you lose a leg in a
Hello, Gwen, again.
Hello, Lady Gwen.
This is great to prop a leg.
Prop a leg up. If you need to raise your monitor up so that it's the proper height, it fits lovely underneath there to give you a good 3-inch thing. But it's hogwash.
The rules was that big. But the rules was like...
Yeah, it's great when you just need that extra inch.
Okay. I was like, you were calling it like a 3-inch. I'm like, what do you have, 3 copies? Because that book's not that big.
Well, it can be if you get the hard copy edition.
Oh, well, fine. Large print, hard copies.
Yeah, but it's very comfortable, very engaging. Yeah, Facebook is still in battle with me. They're worried.
Oh, we glitch you.
Right.
Like, what y'all talking about?
All right. So let's go and see if you're the asshole for deciding to do 23andMe without telling your birth mother.
Oh, if ever there was a moment to use the dill pickle, though, I gotta say, guys, this was the dill pickle.
Oh, well, the poll
I say not the
made its decision, and the decision is no, do all 3. Like, find out every piece of information you can. Because it's important information.
Biofamily be damned.
Right.
I mean, and unfortunately, it sounds ugly when you say it that way, but it's the realities of it.
Right.
And I think that's where we are now. I think it swung open a door.
Right.
For a lot of people that probably needed to have been handled a lot different than it was.
Right.
But that didn't occur.
Right.
So now it's just submit it, and whatever, may the odds be forever in your favor.
Exactly.
Is the system we use. And I think you have to accept that at some point.
Right.
And just go, yep, your hurt feelings aren't my problem.
Right. Nor should they ever be.
Because that's what it boils down to. I mean, again, you may find your own hurt feelings at the end of this. But just getting the test done, I don't think you have to sit there and worry about everyone's.
Exactly.
Brenda says, don't forget to call your favorite psychic about what you should do for dating.
Exactly. And then we can really look at where things are going. And also, Allie will put the link in the show description. I've been nominated to be, May Royalty. We're currently in the voting. The voting began today. Please remember to go and react. It's very simple. It's free. You just hit the like button on my photo. And we can, get me another crown.
Hey. You dropping a link in the comments? What the hell?
Well, I'm dropping a link in the show notes and in the comments. Okay. For those that will, it will be there for you to go and do that. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes, we got that up today. And all that is good to go. Oh, your mom is asking. This is relevant. Sorry, I was getting dinged earlier and I didn't know why, and it was your mom.
Right.
She's like, how do I say yes to vote on you being queen?
Yep, just like my picture, Mother. Put a smiley face below me.
Or an angry one. You can do whatever reaction you want. It counts as a vote.
Yes.
Because that was already my first question, is who the hell did the angry?
And I went and looked, and it's a bot.
Which is like, okay, I don't even know if that vote's going to end up counting, but it was still kind of like, but it counts as a vote.
Yep.
Like anger, like you can get, you can go with whatever emotions he gives you.
Exactly.
It does count. Oh, Brenda's so excited to hear from the Mom and Night.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And for those that have already voted, thank you very much.
Yes.
You can only vote once.
Sadly. And for one. I think they're removing. Oh, yeah. Even Gwen's like, it's a vote. Screw the haters.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah. That works. That works. So, yeah. Anyway, get your vote in.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Oh, and you just got the link out. Cool. Cool. Cool.
Yep. The link is out.
Yes.
Yes. But no, all you got to do is just click the button. We'll get that rocking. We have other voting opportunities coming up, but those haven't opened yet. We did get nominated for Influencer of the Year, which is about the whole network, not just me and Joe, but everyone. I don't know what we're going to do with the plaque if we get it. We may have to, send it around the world.
Pass it along.
Take a picture. Pass it along. Take a picture. Because we got Miss Hazel in the UK. We've got, Sandy in New York. So it's not just, this little operation. It is an international operation.
It is. It's like just the hosts. It's like, sure, we're in West Virginia. And that's where all this originates out of, basically.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But yeah, with the hosts, it gets quite international.
Right.
And multiple time zones, and it's a lot going on there.
It is.
We get you a lot of different opinions from one coast to the other and around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where we even get into the authors.
Right.
Like the show guests, Jesus Christ, working out some of those time zones is, like, we love our guests, but still working out the time zones of when they're going to actually be on air for them.
Exactly.
That's been an experience for you.
It has.
Oh, Joe needs an award for putting up with y'all. Brenda, I think you meant you misspelled prescription.
Yes.
But I will gladly, as an award, take a lifetime Starbucks Med card for the vodka mocha Valium latte.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's all the award I need.
Yes.
The vodka mocha Valium latte.
Very much. We're not that bad.
Extra shots of everything.
You might need extra shots from me.
What?
You do.
We could start an award next year for best pagan media professional. Oh, come on now. Isn't that trophy company tired of seeing you yet? I'm sure every year you show up, they go, "What'd you add this year?" She keeps adding awards.
Right.
Oh, Brenda's not touching that comment. I'm teasing, but she has added awards.
Yes, she has. Well, and there's a lot going on there.
She's like, it's perfect for you, Joe. It's I know that, but then who's next?
Oh God. I don't know. I don't know. There
How many media professionals in West Virginia that handle? I've only ran into 1, 2 others?
3.
3? Are there 3 others now?
Yeah, of course. I think there should be lead witchy husband or lead witchy spouse of the year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you want a first lady award?
I think there should be a first gentleman or first lady.
Oh goodness.
I'm sorry, you guys deserve recognition more than being put on the side and go entertain yourself for a little while. We've got a ritual to do.
Oh, Brenda's now sending me messages to explain to me which comment she's not touching with a 10-foot pole. Oh, it's fun when we have that moment in the show.
Always. Side commentary has the benefit of being a Patreon.
That is a side benefit. But yeah, now. Alrighty. Oh, best supporting witchy partners. There you go. That's
there you go.
We'll definitely take it on. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the weird part is it's just gonna be a bunch of us up there going "Oh, shucks."
Yeah.
That's what the role is. Going "Shucks." What Ed and I are gonna run against each other.
Oh, there are more out there than that.
Sorry, I'm just having a moment. Well, I know, but I'm sitting here. Well, I know one that I'm not running against because I left that one in the dust a while back.
Well, true. Well, true.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to name names or embarrass anyone, but like, I know one who is not my competition. They have gladly stated they are not competition.
Right. They are. They make a lot of things possible. I don't think that people realize, you know. Well, let's go to the oldest supporting spouse I know of, Lord, Frank Call, Lady Kathleen's husband. He was instrumental in so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Brenda says she knows a few you've left in the dust.
I'm just saying there was one that immediately popped to mind. It's like, nope, nope. I know that one is not my competition. Like, smoked that one forever and a day ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I shouldn't say these things out loud.
No, you should not. All right, my darlings. With that, where is it? We do want to thank our Patreons.
Yes, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Mann, Kate Liddell, and Devin. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. And with that, guys, we will be seeing you Thursday with coffee and tea. Good night, y'all.
Good night.